Okay, I think we're live, so hello, if anybody's out there. We are continuing to work on the David Bowie portrait. Today, I changed my setup a little bit, so I have my camera above me, and I'm looking down on it flat so that I can add a little bit more watercolor. I want to just do a little bit of extra washes, especially this part of the hand where I don't like how white it goes down here. I think that that's something that's really throwing off kind of the balance of the piece. Like obviously we have this strip here that's all the watercolor, so it's very light compared to everything else. So I want it to come forward, but within itself, I don't want this to be the lightest thing, just this like palm of his hand area. So we're going to push that back a little bit and maybe punch up a little bit of some color saturation in some areas of his face. And ironically, though I'm working on color, I'm working from a black and white photo. So yeah, we're kind of making up the color. Just based on what I know about faces and skin and shadows and things, which probably isn't a ton. Anyway, so I've got some of my watercolor brushes. I have some, like, you know, I think everybody kind of gets to have some favorites. And where are my favorite watercolor brushes right now? No, that's not it. Well, this is a conundrum. What the heck is going on here? Just when you think you have everything planned out well. Okay, so this is a decent one. Where are they? Have I mixed all my brushes together? Oh, there we go. They were in the wrong section. They were by my oil brushes, and that is incorrect. Okay, anyway. So a few different sizes should get me going today. Do I want this one or no? No. We'll go with that. Okay. Let's put the rest of these back where they actually belong. And my phone keeps popping up on me. I know that there's a way to set it so it doesn't go away so quickly when you have it open for something, but I've never taken the time to mess around with it. And I've got my trusty coffee. I hope you have yours as well. Oh, I haven't had any yet today, so that's good. That helps a lot. All right. Now, sometimes when I'm going to watercolor paint, I get my little, it's just like a pipette to hold water. And I've got my water jar here. And I'll actually use this to go ahead and kind of like pre-moisten my colors in my palette. So, especially anything that I think I'm pretty sure I might be using. Not entirely sure, so I'm going to kind of feel this out. I really probably should, you know, clean my little mixing area here, but hey, why ruin a good thing? All right, well that should get me started. And should be a much darker shadow here. And honestly, beyond really saturating this area with the shadow, it might just be fine to kind of just darken this whole area and let it just fade away. Okay, so let's shed some color on the situation. Get a little bit of my flesh tone working over here. Try to move this so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing. Coffee's in the way. All right. So we're going to take some flesh tone and darken it up plenty to be an intense shadow. I have like the darkest shadows in his face There's a lot of purple in them, and they definitely get very neutral with the way that I mix some with the browns and things. So let's start with that. There's a lot of building that happens. Okay. So let's just start. I get some color here. Right. If you've ever worked with watercolor, you kind of know there's some limitations about how much you can mix and blend at one time before you start to just really kind of mess things up. So probably jump around a bit over the piece about where we're working to try to avoid too much of that happening. Okay. So that's a good start. Definitely will need to be neutralized a little bit. The hand kind of overall is paler than the rest of Mr. Bowie in my picture. So you can beef up a few of the shadowy bits a little, and then give it one or two overall washes to try to push it back a bit. I mean, it's forward in the sense that it is literally in front of him, but it also should not be taking more priority than our subject matter, than his face. Okay. If you hear anything weird, my cat is at my microphone. It's very helpful. There you are. There you are. Want to say hi? Oh, you want to say hi to anybody? I don't let him on this desk. Like, he kind of gets free reign in here, but I don't let him on this desk because this desk is typically where there's going to be paints and things that it's not good for him to get into. So try to avoid him having too much access to anything that can hurt him for sure. All right, just knock over the microphone. No big deal. No big deal. I have ordered a new microphone though, because right now, this is what I'm using. It's an H1N. That's really, like, I've used it in the past. I hook a lavalier to it, like the little mic you wear here. And it works much better for that. But for streaming, this is the best thing I have at the moment. I should have another one coming soon that I can actually, like, move it and trying to make it balance on the arm of my chair that's over here. That's going swimmingly well, clearly. Okay, back to the task at hand. All right. All right. Now I would like to add some more color to his face also. A little more life, which usually comes from, like, warm tones, some pinks. Where are we most likely to have some warmer tones on our skin? Definitely around the nose, the cheeks potentially, ears. right. Same kind of with the hand a little bit. There's actually plenty of variations of flesh color in our hands, just like in our faces. Skin can get to be pretty thin here, so you're going to see more variation in shadow tones, maybe some of the veins that kind of come through, which can be blues and greens, purples. Skin tone is like ridiculously complicated and can be a lot of fun. All right. I'm already, I think that's an improvement. All right. Let's mix my tones here a little bit. I'm adding actually a little bit of green to my shadow because the shadow otherwise is very purple. That helps neutralize it a little. Okay. You can let this sit for just a little bit now, this part, as I continue to fuss with it. Okay, so now what would we do? Let's also very like simple up here. I would add, whoa, there. Maybe a little bit of detail in the hair up here. Okay, get my phone back. Okay, not too much, but just to create a little bit more depth and interest in this section. So it doesn't come forward more so than his face does. So let's see. Saturate that up a little bit. There we go. I'm not trying to paint like every hair. That's not what I'm going for at all. Just like suggestive brush strokes. That kind of create the overall maybe shape of what's happening a little bit. Just to give an idea, because I don't really care. The hair is, I mean, it's half colored. But, oops, sorry, kitty. My kitty's trying to settle in to lay down on the chair where the mic is. He's very cute and helpful. He's, like I say all the time, my studio assistant, but truly the boss of everything. Right, Watson? What's that? And the breaker of all things. As he knocks over the microphone and goes walking on everything in here. Okay, Okay. So maybe we can be about ready to walk away from working on the watercolor and revisit some of the sections that need work in the rest of the painting. And that will allow this to dry a little better. And then I can decide if there's anything more that I want to add. Okay. So set the brush to the side here. When I'm working on this stuff, it's an entirely different set of brushes and things. So let's think. So this section needs something. This is already an improvement. But here, for sure, needs something. And I'm getting to be pretty happy with some of the other areas. I think like I could do more here as well. Because this is kind of, you're just seeing very much like the raw paper that I crinkled up and put on there. So we might add some paint here. I'm not leaning towards adding any more collage elements at this point, I don't think. All right, let's see. Let's move this to the side for a moment. And what now? What now? I think I got these weird giant paint markers. I haven't played with them very much. And they're kind of weird in the sense that that whole thing just came off. Okay, I guess I'm not supposed to twist it off. Pull it. It's not like a marker tip. It's just like a hard plastic nozzle. So you just squeeze it out from that shape, which is interesting. So hey, what would happen? Put some of that down here. Play around a little with that. Maybe a little too bright for that particular section. Maybe. You can tease it out a little bit. Here's another one I have. This one actually has a felt tip on it. I haven't tried to use it yet. Oh, excuse me. Oh my goodness. All right. Let me get something to test this on before I throw it on the paper. So we gotta kind of push it down, try to get that paint flowing. There, you can see it start to come in there. It's slowly like seeping into the foam nozzle. Okay, see, there we are. Now that's supposed to be acrylic paint. It's very, very watery, but that might work to our advantage here. Get kind of grungy brush. I have many grungy brushes. I'm just sort of gonna pull these together right on the canvas, right on the paper. All right. And let me think. I'm going to tone back some of the yellow over here a little bit. Just kind of scrub at some of it with a brush. All right. Ah, there's cat hairs in my brush. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if the black is like, if it's hitting me as being a little too black or if that's just because it's wet. So we'll let that dry up and take a look. Okay. Always have paper towels within reach. Always, always. It's a hard learned lesson right there. Okay. So another thing, all right, I do want to add some color here, as I mentioned. Pull out my acrylic wet palette. Some of the colors that I've used are in here already. I've used on this piece, so this is getting close to needing to be redone, but it'll get us through today. So, give this up a little bit so you can kind of see. It's a big mess, but that's kind of how I love to work. Alright. That's very neutral. And I'm going to take some of that. Up here where I have the little children's vampire fang toy, with some paper over it. We're going to cover a little bit of it with some paint. I want some of the paint, though, to actually have some color to it, like some legit color. So we can go back a little bit to some purples here. Warm it up even more. Like, I'm keeping my background tones pretty neutral and dark, but the closer that we're getting into like his portrait area, we can have some more intense saturation. Alright, let me move this to what is happening and not break everything while I'm at it, preferably. Okay, I want to grab my tiniest palette brush. It's this little guy here. You can see. It's just got a little head on it that's smaller than my finger. Okay. Because I want to pull some of this orange color. I'm just going to pull some of that right into the face. Just like that. Maybe here too. What's that kind of does, it's like creating a frame a little bit more, because like I said, there's like the strip down the side here, which is all his portrait part, but having that frame break in of these two sides somewhat on the bottom here and a little bit of an angle on the top here prevents it from being too just like line, line, line in the composition. And I think as long as we're doing this, let's pull some color up here too into the hand, just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. Why do I feel like when I'm talking about what I'm doing, I'm definitely getting a little bit of Bob Ross vibes about what I'm talking about. We're just going to add a happy little scratch right across the whole thing. Yeah, there we go. Okay, dark up there. Okay, get some of this light purple color. I mean, part of that's going to be the shadow. That won't go away. All right. Happy with that for the time being. I'm kind of waiting till I finish this to create a new palette. It's really bad. It's like the palette paper's curling up on me, and it's just a hot mess. But I want to wait until I'm done with this piece, because this is sort of where I've been mixing the colors I've been using in this. Once I'm done with this, which we're really close to, then I will throw that away and start fresh. Okay. So, we're really close at this point. I have here, should have showed you before I opened it, it's oil pastel kit, a little tiny, like 12-piece one. I don't know if you can tell like how old this looks. I'm going to show you over here because the other camera is got a set point of, it won't focus on something closer. So yeah, it looks kind of like old school, right? The design. This had been, I don't see a date printed on there, but they've got this great like time, or what is this, Futura font, I think, something like that, which is very kind of reminiscent of more mid-century design, not like 50s, 60s, but a lot. I have some materials that had been my dad's, and like some old kits of paint, some old brushes, and the palette knife that I was just using was one of the things. My dad never worked on art my entire life, and probably hadn't since he was younger, much younger. These things are likely from, actually, the 60s. So I also have a screen printing kit from then. I love the design of the box. It looks like it's a board game in the type of box it's in. It's super cool, and I'm really excited to try to use it, but I've been holding on to it for years, and I'm like, one of these days. Here's another thing. I've used some old paper. There was some watercolor paper I was using. This is a set of old old oil paints that I haven't broken into yet. The tiny little jar of linseed oil. Rectified turpentine. I might not use that one. That one's almost empty anyway. But yeah, I mean, I'll have to see how good they still are. I did end up throwing away a bunch of old little tubes like this of oil paints that were his, because they were just gone to, like, they were rock hard and they were so old. But these actually seem like they're still pretty pliable and in like usable condition, so I might play around with those. But yeah, I have actually two little old kits of Cray pots. The oil-based pastels. This one's kind of a neat design too with the packaging. It's pretty cool. There's something about the lettering in some of this old like stuff from this era where there's really wide, sorry, dropping my microphone again. There's like really a lot of spacing, not just between the letters, but between the lines of text. kerning, tracking, whatever. I know these things, but I forget which is called which. I confuse the names of them, but yeah, this one's from Japan, this one's from Korea, randomly. And it's pretty great. Like, there's even these little like, flower designs on the end of it. They're very cute. So I've legitimately been using some of these things and incorporating it into my artwork. My dad's been gone for, it'll be 10 years this May. And that's kind of like a way to still feel close to him by incorporating things that he had into the work that I do now. It's a way to still feel like there's some kind of relevant relationship. Is that the right word? Given, I don't know. I guess it's kind of weird and probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's just like a sense of connection with what I'm doing now, where you always wonder, I don't know if you can hear my cat talking. You always kind of wonder, all this time later, what would he think of what I'm doing? What would he think of the art that I'm making? Yeah, you know, that kind of thing. Just a way to stay connected, or to feel a connection, whether that's just, I mean, obviously it's in my head, but, you know. But yeah, it's hard to believe it's going to be 10 years this year. That's crazy. Here's my cat again, saying hi. Why don't you say hi to the camera? Why don't you say hi? I don't know if I could turn my camera enough that you can really see him here in the chair. No, not quite. No, he's laying down. And the microphone was laying on top of him there. Okay, we'll let him be. I think he's finally just going to settle down and hang out, which is fine. He's my boy. When I had the camera facing my easel over on this side, you could see him better walking around everything. So you have to let me know if that's a detriment to my live streams, that you can't see him or not. More cat equals more better, right? All right, let's keep going. Let's continue. How does this? These blacks have dried and it's not popping out so much that it bothers me anymore. All right, I was thinking about adding some kind of like scribbles or line work with a oil pastel. If you heard a weird sound, that was my cat burping. He's right next to the microphone. I mean, he's behind it, so it might not pick it up, but still, that's really funny. And the things that I'm breaking. So I watched some movies this week. Shocker. Nothing super bad. The best movie, most interesting movie that I watched, I am a David Cronenberg fan, the director. I don't know if you don't know who he is. He's kind of most renowned for doing a lot of like body horror, we'll say. I mean, we'll say that is the truth. That's kind of his. That's been his thing. Yeah, I've been a fan of his since I think I saw the movie Existence when it came out ages ago. I don't remember how. I must have been, was it in the 90s? Was it when I was in high school? Maybe. Something like that. I've really enjoyed it. And everything else he's done, it's always very interesting. The thing about horror movies, part of the reason I enjoy them, which I often wonder about and think about a little bit, like why do I love them so much? One thing about horror movies, and if they're good, you can use horror as a platform to talk about anything. Your villain or your monster or whatever the threat is, whether it's like, I don't know, there's so many different ways it could go, but you can talk about real world things in such a raw way that you can't always necessarily do very well in other mediums. Okay. I'm just going to continue working while I chat about it. When I see something that I think I could have done a little bit better on, I'm just going to kind of go back and forth here. Yeah, so anyway, he just put out recently, this last year, this film, Crimes of the Future. Had Viggo Mortensen as the lead, who's an amazing actor. So I was excited to give that a watch. It's on Hulu. And, sorry, doing things and thinking and talking at the same time. I enjoyed it a lot. I think it was not like a perfect movie. Some of the metaphors and things that he was using didn't really coalesce altogether at the very end. It was, there's a lot of things that you could say it's talking about. Like, it's talking about, what does art mean? And that's the sort of question that certainly is interesting to me. Is it building something? Is it destroying something? Is it like, what's the value of it being subversive, and to what end? At what point does that become, can that become just like pretentious? So that's an element of the movie. And there's also this element of like autonomy over your physical body. What rights do you have versus your society and government and whatever else to choose how you treat it, what happens to it, if you're allowed to be what you are. And there's a lot of parallels to multiple things going on right now. Of course, and obviously, like the issue of like trans rights, for sure. Like there's so many areas where we're seeing folks attacked. There's issues of obviously women's autonomy with our bodies, which is a big, you know, something very close to the heart for me. That's something I care about a lot. So definitely a lot of things to think about and talk about within that movie. And I like that in my films. I like to walk away from it and like have it itching my brain for a day or two. The other movies I watched were, so anyway, I'd really recommend that if you have any tolerance for kind of gross things, because there's definitely an element of, like I said, body horror. It's not like gore style horror, people getting murdered or anything like that. It's a whole different approach, but there is an element of gore to it. If you're okay with that, I recommend it. It's interesting. And otherwise, I saw 2 other movies that were almost similar, but one was called The Darkest House. These were all on Hulu this particular weekend. The Darkest House was... this was a movie that is like trying to talk about men being creeps to women, but it does it in a very, like, okay, big time feminist. But this movie does it in such like a cheesy, ham-fisted way that, It had that actor in it that was like the Mac guy. Remember those old commercials where it's like, I'm a PC, I'm a Mac. He was the Mac. He was in Barbarian. I can't remember his name to save my life right now. And it has some of the most awkward, like those awkward exchanges that you can have with people, just awkward conversations. They portray that, and it goes on just like for the first half of the movie, it's nothing but just awkward exchanges and conversation that like is almost enough to make you like, ugh, just, ugh. Yeah, I didn't love it. There was another other actor, and it's a small film. It takes place in one place, and there's like four actors in the whole thing. So it's obviously like a smaller budget film, even though the set is crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one. And this weird like attempt to tie into the Dracula story where the female characters, it's Mina and Lucy, and just, oh, eye rolling. Super eye rolling. Anyway, the other movie I watched, going along the lines of houses, was The Night House. Yeah, it was The Night House. That was good. That was like your horror element is a metaphor for grief and guilt. And a woman's lost her husband. And she starts, like, just happened, right? It was the movie's beginning. It's her coming home from the funeral. Turns out that he shot himself. And then she starts to uncover all these weird things about what he was doing and what was happening. And it gets very interesting because it's about, like, what it also touches on, like, what is out there. Is there anything real? And then it starts to like define what nothing is as a horror element. It was pretty interesting, pretty clever. The ending was okay. But yeah, I'd recommend that one. So hey, 2 recommendations for movies that are horror movies, but they're thinkers. They're interesting. And also, I mean, I haven't watched any this week, but I do love dumb horror movies too. Like, bad dumb. I love B horror films, especially from the 80s. That's like, Be Still My Heart, just a good time. Even really bad ones, kind of love it. Do I have a peek? Yeah, so I like both those things. I think the only genre of horror that I'm not a big fan of is like what they call like torture porn, the Saw movies, the Hostel movies. They especially those in particular have like this try hard feel to them. To me, I definitely feel like, what's his name? The guy that did the Hostel movies especially. Can't remember his name because I don't remember things. There's like a pretension to it. Like, he thinks he's being real smart and clever about having something to say, but it doesn't really, I don't like them. I just don't care for it. And ironically, like, apparently that's a big thing. It's a big thing in French horror to get like really kind of gross out, torture-y. And that's kind of interesting to have learned about. that was a thing. Because I didn't know that previously. Now I do. So French horror, not necessarily my favorite. At least I've seen some that I like and some that I just grossness for the sake of grossness. Okay, I need to move my coffee because I'm about to put my brush in there. Can't be next to the water. Okay, where are we at? I want a little more pink. A little more pink for the face. I don't like that color. Sorry, I should show you. I'm kind of figuring out. Just go straight. I want a really warm. That's getting muddy. Just clean this up a little bit. Okay. Okay. What am I doing? Is this one? No. Okay. That's a nice warm pink. Want a little more red in it. Okay. Another thing that you have to be able to kind of keep an eye on working on something, especially, well, any piece. Watercolor is especially egregious for this because if you go too far, you really get a mess on your hands that you can't necessarily rescue. Deciding when something's done, that's like a whole other thing. Because the way that I'm working here, I could probably screw with this for ages and ages, add layers and layers and layers, and just keep going. But knowing when it's done can be like half of it. Let's see. I'm looking towards the camera because I can see on the screen just this, like you guys see it. And so that's sort of like my stepping back to see what's happening and decide if I'm happy with it where it is. Grab a good old Posca marker. There's a part of me that wishes I'd leaned a little heavier into the assemblage element where things are coming off the canvas, but because I'm working on a watercolor paper and watercolor pad, I also can't get too heavy with my elements. I think if I was working on board, then weight isn't really an issue and you can just go and go and go. Okay, let me think. It's kind of a hand, kind of. Why? I don't know. Sometimes you just do the thing. All right. Okay, okay, okay. There's one more thing I want to do, I think. Let's see how I feel about this area too. How's this? This is fine, I think. That line of that drip is a little hard and just out there. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I brought a refill for my coffee. So I could keep working. Thinking ahead. Look at me. Alright. Some warm coffee. By the way, I had so much fun making these stickers. Masterpiece in progress with the brain as the palette. Nurture the weird. Because, yes, all day, every day. Anyway, okay. What I'm going to do is one more swipe with my acrylic paints. What time is it now? It's 10:30. Not even 10:30. My goodness. Making good time this morning. Working on this guy. Let's not put our shirt right in the paint palette. Okay. bigger palette knife so I can get a bigger swipe. Let's just pull this over here. And yeah, there's like, oh, I pulled the wire out of my camera. Oh, there we go. It came back. Ah, smooth. There's wires like hanging right out of frame here because for my camera, which is just above. There's like the power wire and the wire that goes to the HDMI capture card. So yeah, and then my mic, which is like precariously rested on the arm of a chair. It's not ideal, we'll say. And I don't know how much more I want to set this up to like be this setup for good, because I'm only going to be working on the table like this, mostly if I'm doing anything watercolor based. Okay, so let me mix a little bit more of my that green tone that I've been using in the background. Get a little light here. Nice, big, very flat mix of that. Okay, that's looking nice. Next, okay. I'm going to take my big old blade here, up here in this corner. Just want to cover up some of what's happening there. Something with something flat. I'm going to do it over here too. Doing it over here too. Okay. All right. Okay. Where'd that come from? Where are we at now? Okay. It's on low. Okay. That's going to be very reflective until it dries, but this kind of, I think you can kind of see yeah, with this light, with the one light off, where this, I've added this like flat color back in on top of things a little bit. Okay. And the point of that was that this was all, like, I loved the texture. It was very busy and layered, but this kind of helps push it back. Like, it's all still there. It's all still underneath and busy, but having that little bit of like a little bit of flat stuff scraped across, flat color scraped across the top, pushes it back a little bit, just a little bit. Like it's behind something, it's behind the wall. Like you've started to lay plaster over an old wall that's been painted over again and again and again. Layers of wallpaper starting to peel up, and you just do that first initial scrape of plaster to start to cover it up. So that actually allows this side to fall back a little bit more, that corner. And for everything going on we're still pulled in primarily here, that's what we're looking for. What do you think? There's just one part of me that's like, oh, a little more colored pencil lines. I think we're gonna call it. I think I'm gonna say that this is done. How about that, guys? How about that? I think we're done. I think it's done. Huh, all right. So in theory, the last thing to do would be to sign it, right? Probably should do that. Oh, look. My paper down here. It's like not completely adhering the corners. Good thing I've got some of my good old adhesive that I love so much to get everywhere. All right, let's fix that. That's right where I thought I would be signing a thing. Let's get underneath the corners. Get that down. Let's just do a quick check around, make sure that everything is really thoroughly adhered. I think most things are so covered in paint that kind of creates another level of adherence that we're good. All right. For whatever reason, I've always been really bad at remembering to sign my work. I'm trying to be much better at it recently. Recently being the last few years. What's this? An 8H. That's going to be too hard. I don't have very many pencils right over here. Oh, what else have I got? Random travel bag of some pencils and stuff, so maybe I have something here where I don't have to go digging. All my other pencils and things are on the desk, kind of behind the monitor, and definitely behind all the cords that are running across very precariously. 4B would work. It's not very sharp. Man, some of this stuff is so old. Ah, pencil sharpener. Okay. A little bit of everything in here. This thing I have had since high school because I was really into like detailed inking weird stuff for a long time. Okay. Hey, look at that. An X-Acto blade. Nice. Let's put it back where I'm going to forget that it exists again. Okay. I've got a 4B pencil. So you probably are familiar with a number 2 pencil. Pencils actually have numeric rankings of how hard or how soft they are. It goes all the way from 8H at one end, maybe even higher, but that's often what you see is like the really high end. That's hard, the hard one, so they draw, an 8H draws very soft lines. No matter how hard you push, it's going to be very light and hard leaded. And then it goes down, counts down until you get to like your HB, and then it gets into the Bs. So when you get all the way up to an 8B, that's very soft. And you press hard with that, and it's just going to be like pure graphite on your paper. So it's soft, it will rub away. You can like blend it. So this is a 4B, so it's nice hard, or nice soft lead, so it'll look very dark when I sign with it. Just come in here. It's not super dark as I expected, but I'm putting it on top of some layers of paint and stuff, but that year 20, oh my god, it's 2023. How about that, baby cat? Mwah. How about that? We finished picture. Okay. Signed. Almost dry. The very last thing you do when you're done, and normally I'd let this hang out for a while because there's still a little bit of dampness up here. But what the heck? We can't have all the fun by ourselves. Oh, that's funny. I just went to pull out my X-Acto blade and there's no blade there. Did I take it out and not replace it? Or has something happened? I'm very confused and a little worried. Anyway, good thing I know where there's another one now. I do have more blades in the closet behind me, but I'm not going to worry about that now. Okay, so probably from when I was in college, X-Acto blade. And I've got my watercolor block here, and it's only attached, it's like adhered on both sides, on two sides. So sort of like you have a book that where you have to tear off the pages, they're adhered on one side, except we got that same kind of adhesive on two sides to hold it flat while I'm working. Some of the really nice ones will maybe have like 3.5 sides, but you find your open spot. Get my little, get my blade in there and start working around the edge. And usually it's not much of a thing to do this, but because of the way I've been working, we're going to have like some paints gone off the sides and created an extra layer of adherence to the pad. Some parts of it just pop away because they're barely adhered to begin with because it's been pulling up. And other parts are like particularly adhered. Okay, one side loose. This is the exciting part. This is like the ta-da, we finished a thing. All right. Go carefully in those spots where it's like extra adhered because I don't want to tear paper at all. Not this page or the one below it either, because watercolor paper, it's a bit of an investment. Like, you don't want to be wasteful with it. It's not very cheap. Okay. There we are. Put that cap on before you lose it because, I mean, as you can see, I have a Band-Aid on because I cut myself with a knife a couple days ago. These have been a source of injury of many an art student and artist over generations. So always, always be extremely careful. Okay. Check it out, y'all. It's done. We have a finished mixed media David Bowie portrait. Exciting. We got our dimensional elements. The little guy there is glued on real well, adhered on real well. I mean, I used a construction adhesive on paper because not messing around apparently. But yeah, they're not going anywhere. And that's what we got. How about that? Look at it took 3 sessions to go from almost entirely just having the watercolor done and like 2 pieces of paper and a couple of things of paint. So this is my 3rd stream and it's done. Now I can go take a nap. I've achieved a thing. All right, now I will put it to the side and not look at it for a while because I will start being like, oh, but I could do this, oh, but I could do that, and like picking at it and going back and forth about, wait, shouldn't I do more there? But no, this is it. So if I walk away from it for a while, don't look at it, then I'm going to do a better job at not screwing it up further or going back in and being like, okay, I'm going to change everything now and ruin it. Maybe ruin it, maybe not. But either way, it's done. It's done. It's done. Telling myself. And then I'll get a good proper photo of it so I can post it and have it online. And yeah, well, it's been fun. I will have to come up with something different to work on for next time. Oh, I'm sorry, Awesome Clown. I'm just seeing your comments. I don't know when you commented. Start over. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll probably put it for sale. I'll once I have it set, and I'll figure out what's going to happen with it. But likely, yes. And I will keep posted on the streams what's going to happen with it and where it is if anybody's interested in finding it. I will be streaming again on Thursday afternoon. My times are kind of like Monday morning and Thursday afternoon. So that's my plan. I'm going to like post a regular schedule for it. And I will have something different, something completely different to work on Thursday because done, finished, yay, yay. That's a good feeling. It's a very good feeling. So yes, anyway. Thanks to anybody who's joined me on all of these streams getting this guy done. It's been super fun. Using Photoshop to paint digitally. Oh, you know what? I have used Photoshop. I have done digital artwork, especially when my work was much more like illustration based. I don't mind it. You can, in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's harder, just like any different medium. I found that I was really missing the tactile experience of having my hands in something, you know, having paint and glue all over my hands and all the things. I just missed it, and there's something that I really enjoy and appreciate about the tactileness of the paint and of making the choices of the things I'm going to tear up and utilize in here. Because I use the collage elements, and there's just something satisfying about it that I felt like I was missing when I worked like entirely digitally. So I've done a lot of things. I had a lot of work that I did create from Photoshop, even Illustrator. I've done both of those things for many years, and I've just kind of come around back to working with my hands. It's, at least right now, it's what I'm really enjoying, and yeah, it's also been, you know, a challenge because I never used to work in watercolor, and so all of a sudden I decided to do like portraits and things in watercolor, and there's no undo button. That's the trouble with watercolor. Once you put that brush stroke down, there is not much going back. Whereas if you work with acrylic or if you work digitally or something else, you can generally like cover up a mistake or, you know, kind of work with it a little bit better. If you watched my last stream, you would have seen I went to put some of this blue up here and it just dripped right down the canvas. It's like, hey, we're going with it. Because there's no undoing that either. It's a different kind of a challenge. Yeah. But there's no wrong or right. There's no better or worse. It's all just a medium that you have to learn and work with the way that best suits you. And if your intention is to have things as digital files to either sell or have reproduced digitally, then that makes a ton of sense too. There's another issue with working with your hands like this is anything has to be reproduced, you have to do a really good job photographing it somehow or scanning it. If it's a smaller piece, you can try that, but even then, it's really hard to really get your colors right and really get, I mean, it's like if you go see the Mona Lisa in person, it's never going to look the same as when you see it in photographs in a book. There's always going to be that difference. Start art while you were an adult. I got into art I mean, as a kid, that's sort of what I decided I wanted to do with my life. I did go to art school and majored in illustration, and then I worked in graphic design for a lot of years. And it's been making the switch away from graphic design and just getting back to even beyond the roots, because illustration is a place where that's where I did a lot of the digital art, because you want faster turnaround. It needs to be easily reproduced and sent to somebody. So yeah, I mean, but there's been a lot of reinventions of myself. Like I've only in the last few years really kind of turned around to doing like this tactile art again, working with paint and such. So the answer is both yes and no. Because if you're an artist, I think there's often times of reevaluating what you're doing and recreating yourself, reinventing yourself, reinventing your work, and trying new things and yeah, changing it up. So yeah, it's a good question. And my cat has an answer to it too. I don't know if you heard. he thinks it's almost lunchtime, so he's talking. Oh yeah, but yeah, I do remember getting into art as a kid, and definitely in like high school. That was my identity. I was the goth artist kid. That was me. Took all the art classes, had my sketchbook of like angsty, detailed pen drawings of gross things, and yeah, that was a time in my life for sure. But yeah, I mean, man, we could talk about a lot of things, about the experiences of art school, about finding work, about all these things. There's so much we could get into, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think that I think we're going to wrap it for today, though. Work is done. Thank you guys for joining, and thanks for the questions. Awesome Cloud, you are awesome too. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you maybe on Thursday when I'm working on something entirely new and I don't know what it's going to be yet, so that's exciting. Many people discourage people from going to art with the reason that they are too old to start. Yeah, I know that that's a thing that people say, but there is no such thing as too old to start. I mean, some very famous artists were in their 50s before they really started working on art. There is no point at which there's always going to be some people trying to gatekeep about what anyone else can and can't do. Just if it's what you're interested in, if it's what anyone's interested in, do it. Absolutely. Careers in art can be frustrating and difficult to have no matter what your age. There's different advantages and disadvantages to being like somebody who went to art school or self-taught or anything. I would just say, if it's what you're interested in, it's never too late. There's never too late to learn to do something that you love to do. If you have things you want to say creatively, that's as valid as anyone else. Like, yeah, forget it. Forget what anyone else says. Do it. And there are so many resources. You don't have to go to art school necessarily. You can learn on your own because there's so many resources between YouTube being incredible and books, and I don't know where you live, but I mean, this didn't exist where I grew up, but around where I live now, there's schools that teach classes to all ages and have open studios and critiques and things. Yeah, just start, I would say. It doesn't matter your age. I mean, all things considered, to start trying to have a career as a fine artist, yeah, it's late for me in that regard too. A lot of people that would be considered emerging artists are young in their 20s, but that's not always the case at all because I'm not in my 20s. Do I see challenges with artificial intelligence art? Yeah, that's an interesting thing to follow. The AI art, as it is now, you definitely have a hard time really quantifying it as art that somebody's created. It is, I can see the potential uses for it. I can see the upheaval it will create. The biggest benefits I see are for things like storyboarding and ideation for companies that have like marketing departments and stuff. They might use it to do their advertising stuff rather than pay to have someone either on staff or contractor do it for them. But in terms of it being like credible art, however you want to define art, that's a lot of funny gray area there. Having an idea, which is what I think people talk about. I've heard the argument that it democratizes creating art, which is a really bizarre thing to me to make as an argument. You're still not the one creating the art. You have an idea, and every idea is credible, but having an idea does not make the art your art when you feed it into a machine and it gives you something. I think there's a lot of ethical problems with the way that the systems scrape other artists' work without permission and reuse it, and then other people want to be able to say that I own this and I can sell it, and the artists for whom the system exists based on being able to see their works will never see any payoff from that. When you're trying to make, scratch your way and make a living as it is, which is hard enough as an artist. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of gray area that will have yet to be defined and worked out. I think that in terms of like something you'd ever see hanging in a museum, where it is now, absolutely not. If people are talking about it, well, why would I pay you for a commission if I can just go to AI and do it? Well, you're not looking for a piece of art then. You're like the person that's looking for, you like a character and you don't care who creates it. You just want something that looks cool in the end. That's a different kind of thing, and I don't know, whatever. That's not... Yeah, I'm not speaking very eloquently on this. This was a good question that caught me, having only had one cup of coffee. There's a lot of problems. And an artist, when they create, like every decision that I make, like when I walked through doing this, and I've talked about why I do different things and why I add something or I don't, and why I specifically choose each element and what it might say, that's what you get from an artist that you're not going to get from a machine. A lot of that kind of thing. Do I know? I don't know if I'm going to even attempt to pronounce that name. I will embarrass myself and them. Nightmare Artist. I am not familiar with them, but I will write that down and look them up. I love learning about new artists. Let me find... Sorry if this is loud. I'm looking for a notepad. I just cleaned my studio and it's like the worst thing ever because now I can't find anything. I'm writing down the name. I will check it out. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for a recommendation of someone to look up. I'm curious to see what they are. Okay. Sip of coffee. It's been a very productive morning. You got my brain going like in whole other directions now. It's funny how being productive in one thing doesn't always translate to being productive in other things. Like cleaning and being in that mode, like of like doing chores, doesn't necessarily translate naturally into like sitting down and creating a piece of art, and then sitting down and creating a piece of art and getting that flow going doesn't always translate into like turning around and being able to pick up working on your accounting for your taxes and things like that. It's just like there's They can be such different neural networks that you're tapped into that sometimes having to switch to a different one, it's a weird thing that it could take a second. Check his work in YouTube, an artist who used to do creepy art, but unfortunately, oh, well, that is unfortunate. But I am a big fan of creepy. I will absolutely check him out. Thank you. I have a very soft place in my heart for the creepy things. I very much love it. Yeah. Even I remember when I was in art school that like people talked a lot about Francis Bacon, and I was very removed from the whole fine art approach and didn't understand the appeal, but within the last couple of years, I've really started to love, like, his stuff is really creepy too. There's a great documentary on YouTube called Brush with Violence, and it's about him and his work, and I highly recommend watching that. He had a pretty messed up life, plenty of trauma in his young days to create a lot of fuel for some weird artwork, which is really intense, and there's some really creepy, amazing stuff there. So yeah, I also recommend, if you are a fan of creepy art, Francis Bacon, A Brush with Violence, here on YouTube. That's where I saw it. But yes, I will check him out. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. It is almost 11 o'clock and been busy. But yes, again, I will be here Thursday afternoon. I will schedule a post so you'll know what time. I haven't really set the times yet, but my approximate thing is like Monday mornings and Thursdays afternoons, kind of trying to figure out what works best. And I hope to see you then. Thank you so much for joining. Awesome Cloud, you got some great questions and everything. Thank you so much. And I'll hopefully see you later. Bye.